So mastering the middle ground, I'll say a little bit more about, there are a few other things that I think will be helpful to understand mastering the middle ground. So mastering the middle ground is in direct opposition, I would say, or at least very much different from the paradigm we've inherited in this area of health and vitality. And that is one of the all or nothing approach, right? So the all or nothing approach, if we think about nutrition, it is commonly expressed as overindulgence or deprivation, overindulgence or deprivation, and dancing back and forth between those two. And the thing about this all or nothing overindulgence or deprivation approach is, first of all, it doesn't work. And by work, I mean, it doesn't allow people to produce and sustain the health outcomes they feel the most that are most important to them. Two is it comes from a place of self-aggression. And where I would invite you listeners to look at to see, does that seem true to me? Right? Look at how you feel after you have overindulged or after you've gone through a period of deprivation. Does it feel like self-love or does it feel like self-aggression? I would say for most people, and certainly in my history when that was the approach I took, I know for me for sure it was self-aggression. And, you know, it not working and it is fundamentally a call to come up with a whole new way of approaching our health and ourselves. And so that's what I call authoring or mastering your middle ground. And this middle ground is this not too tight, not too loose area, right? Overindulgence and indulgence are two very different things, right? So indulgence means that when you're making choices, a few things. First of all, you have the experience of being in the driver's seat, right? Versus being owned by the food or the situation or the people around you. And it also means when you indulge selectively, right, you are able to produce the outcomes you care the most about, right? With overindulgence, you can't do that. So, you know, when people are in the journey of mastering their middle ground, when I work with them, we do a lot of work to kind of look at, okay, where are you right now? What are your unique challenges? And what are the outcomes you care the most about? What are your physiological barriers, right? We're looking at labs. I'm tracking people in their lives, how they're moving and sleeping and digesting and nutrition, all these different things. And with that, we begin to map a path ahead that really is one born of mastering one's middle ground. And so it becomes a partnership with guidance so that people do arrive at a place where, you know, one of the greatest things that I've heard is, I remember, you know, last year around this time, one of my patients reached out to me and said, this holiday season was the first year I didn't arrive at January 1st wanting to new year, new me myself, right? Because I swayed. I didn't break. I just made choices. Yeah, okay, fine. I had the 2 glasses of wine there and I had the cookie there, but I didn't say screw it, right? I took that middle ground approach and made choices and felt like I was in the driver's seat and making those choices. And that's what I love, right? This is really developing a whole new relationship with food. And so there are many different ways to access a new reality. And one of them is with our language. Now, the thing is, we need to make sure our language doesn't live as a lie in our mind, right? So if you don't feel great in your jeans, your brain's going to know you're lying. If you're like, I look amazing, I look hot in these jeans, your brain's going to be like, you're lying. No, you don't. I don't think so, right? So I'm not saying lie, right? But it's tapping into a different kind of truth, right? So an example of this, right, different language would be, instead of talking about food as good or bad, which collapses morality with how we're caring for our body. And typically when we do that, that's a fast track to shame. And for most of us, shame is not super effective in causing long-term shifts in this area, right? In this area of life. So we want to, in that case, you know, one of the things I talk to people about is talking about the quality of your food. High quality or low quality, high in nutrients, low in nutrients, right? Aligned with my intention, not aligned with my intention. Those are useful. Those actually, when I think about useful, what I want to what I'm looking for is, do they open up the world for a new action, or do they keep you stuck? And I was bad yesterday, or I cheated yesterday. It just really doesn't free most people up to take new actions. It more than anything gets people stuck in this vicious cycle of overindulgence or deprivation, rather than, wow, gosh, if I look at what I ate yesterday, it really doesn't align with my intention. And, in fact, I kind of regret it. So if I could learn from it, like if someone were to say that, they could look back and say, okay, well, what happened was I didn't go to the grocery store on Sunday when I said I was going to, and so I didn't have the food in the house that I needed. Okay, great. So maybe we can create a schedule or system around getting food in your house that works for you. And there's so much to this, right? There's strategy, there's information, there's working with the ever shifting landscape of life, right? So there's a lot to this work, but it is so fun to see the light bulb go on, and to people really getting this, because it's tremendous what a difference it makes. Because I do think sometimes when I'm speaking in these conversations, I talk more in the heart-centered approach and less in the data-driven approach, but I really am both, right? And so the data-driven approach is, in many ways, I don't talk about it a lot because it's like, well, that's the easy stuff. It's like, once we figure out what tests to run, which is something, right? We don't want to be, there are a gajillion tests we could run. We want to run the right tests for the right person. So once we figure out what tests we need to run, the answers are in them, and so by tests, I'm looking at, what we might call standard lab tests. This is part of the data we're collecting. And by standard, I simply mean that you're going to a big lab company like Quest to have your blood drawn. There's really nothing standard about the labs I run because, I let people know, listen, you're going to feel like you're donating blood. We're going to get a lot of information. And I even have people who, there are certain pockets of the world where people are going to Quest with some frequency who work with me, and the phlebotomists will know my name, right? They're like, oh yeah, she does. Like they know what's coming, right? So that's, part of the data. And then of course there's this whole world of specialty labs where we get more data. And these are things like microbiome assessment or adrenal and sex hormones, if we're trying to understand something going on with menstrual cycles or fertility or even skin. We might be looking at food sensitivities. Those are just some of the many, mold toxicity. These are just some of the many specialty lab assessments we might run if useful. So, that's the whole data part. And then, bringing it back to the heart, right? I talked about authoring your vision of vitality. That is the beginning of our work together, starts there really. I also, when I'm providing people with guidance, right? Once we actually have these numbers, this data to take action on, I know I'm a person who needs to really understand the why behind a recommendation, right? Again, that goes back to the reading Matthew Walker's book, right? Like I need to understand the why to do something that's hard for me because I really like to stay up late, it's fun. So I need to know the why, right? And I just assume that most people are like me, at least most of the people who I work with, right? They're learners, they're committed evolvers. And so when we're looking at lab results, I'm walking them through, what does this mean for you and your health, right? What does this data, this number that we're looking at, whether it's low B12 or high homocysteine or, whatever the case may be, what does it mean specific to you and your health and the outcomes that matter most to you and the symptoms you're experiencing and the conundrums? And to me, it is so cool. Like I feel like a detective of sorts, Chris, right? I get these labs in and I get so excited to look at them. And then it's like, it's like the puzzle pieces start to come together and it becomes clear, okay, what is our step forward? What's our path ahead to healing? And not only that, but we're going to circle back. We do those labs again to measure progress. Of course, I want people to notice the difference, whether it's around energy or digestion or skin or hormones or weight. I want them to notice the difference, but we also want those objective measurements to see what's happening under the hood, to see the shifts that we're causing. Begin playing a better game right now. In other words, actually be in a curious question with yourself. And that question is, what is my best game right now in this moment, right? So that could be around how you're fueling your body, what you're eating and drinking. It could be around how you're moving. It could be around sleep or your use of social media, or your time spent connecting with others, right? Really looking at what is my best game right now. And it may be, okay, I've had 3 glasses of wine. I wish I'd stopped at 2. My best game right now is to not have any more. Okay, good. Great. Wonderful. Maybe it is, okay, my best game right now is I intended to get 45 minutes of movement in my day, but work came up, the kids came up, someone needed something for me, and now I only have 20 minutes. Well, I'll take these 20 minutes. I wanted the 45, but I will take these 20, right? So it's really looking at, okay, what is my best game right now? And really in earnest engaging in that question and leaning into the wisdom of your answer over and over again. Given the nature that I work with a lot of people with digestive stuff going on, and also the brain gut connection. So if it's anxiousness or depression, there's a brain gut connection. If it's skin stuff, there's a gut skin connection, right? So all these different things. So a comprehensive microbiome assessment, also lovingly called a 3-day poop test. Just what it sounds like, right? So we're not talking about like the one-off 1-day collection. Those are not typically super useful. These are super comprehensive assessments of the microbiome, understanding what good bugs are present and what aren't. Are there parasites present? Are there yeast present? Are there viruses present? Are you actually digesting protein, fats, carbs appropriately? Not everybody in the world needs to be on a digestive enzyme, right? Is there excess inflammation in your gut, which, by the way, then points to an autoimmune condition, right? Ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. So we get all of this super rich information in a microbiome assessment. And there's just no other way to get this information, right? It's a great test.
What are 1 to 2 things people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
A few things. One is I would say, okay, so let's think about this. One is they do too much cardio and they don't do enough strength training. That helps me because I really wanted a few more on that 3 list. So, too much cardio, not enough strength training. And another one is insufficient focus on nutrition as a whole, right? Oftentimes people think that if I just exercise enough, it's okay if I do XYZ nutritionally speaking. And having been one of those people, I understand it, right? Thinking I could exercise my way out of, I thought I was making good choices, but now based on what I know now, right, I would say not true, right? So, you can't exercise your way out of lots of sugar or lots of simple carbs or more alcohol than serves your body, right? You just can't, right? And so that would be the thing. And I appreciate that is confronting, but the faster we confront that, the better we can move along in the journey of mastering our relationship with food and beverages and making shifts that we can sustain over time.